me and a friend of mine were panhandling. Well, we walked up, we robbed him. He was getting in the car with Tiff.
I'm just going to cut that part out right there, and that's going to be the hook.
Okay.
They're like, who's he interviewing today?
Just went up and robbed him. There is no true analog close to the force on force. Well scripted force on force. Because bad force on force can give negative heuristics or bad habits. The best way to me to simulate what goes on in real life is Sims. This thing where we draw, point the gun at a target, and just hose it. We got to do something other than that. We have a tendency to just shoot faster. There's information coming in, and you have to react to that. Which brought me to a quote, Lee Weems, when he was like, "You're shooting into the past."
That's good. I like that a lot.
And what might have been okay then might not be okay now. I have a lot of gun violence in my life. 4 years ago, my best friend was murdered while doing armed guard work. He's one of several. My brother was stabbed to death when I was on patrol. I went to the call, but I didn't blame knives. I knew that that was a human that did that to him. It's just putting the blame where it belongs sometimes can be a little difficult for some people. And so I believe that we have to take into consideration that framing. And I think it starts with how we talk to people, how we present ourselves in a way that they can relate to us.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Defenders and Disciples podcast. Today, I'm joined by my good friend Aqil Qadir of Citizen Safety Academy and Rangemasters. Aq's firearms instruction experience goes back to when he was 12 years old, teaching urban youth in his father's gun club. He has been a civilian trainer for over 30 years and a law enforcement trainer for over 25 years. Aq holds instructor certifications in NRA, USCCA, Rangemasters, and many others. During our conversation, we discussed several topics, including the importance of gateway instruction and how to get more people interested in this community, the realities of violent encounters, the importance of force-on-force training, why mindset matters, and much more. And now I give you Aqil Qadir. Aq, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Happy to.
I'm really excited about this episode. So, let's talk about how you got into teaching and instructing. How did Citizen Safety Academy start? And you just go through kind of your backstory and what motivated you to do that.
Me, I'm one of the few people that I know that I've been doing this literally all my life. You know, we say that, and I'm one of those guys that not only was carrying guns or around guns, but my dad was an instructor. And what makes my story a little different is my dad was an African-American instructor, an NRA instructor, when there wasn't a whole lot of them, which is another interesting point was I was born into the Black Power movement to some extent. You know what I'm saying? So, it was about self-determination and, for African-Americans. And part of that was not only defending themselves against possibly, racist police and things like that at the time, but really my dad had a thing against the tyranny of criminal element. He would always talk about, in our neighborhoods,
right,
And so he was an NRA instructor, and he was always the kind of guy that, would go places that other people wouldn't. And a lot of people thought he was crazy, but he realized even back then that a lot of his beliefs really, he shared a lot of beliefs with the quote unquote conservatives in the gun culture. You know what I'm saying? So he would hang out with them, and he brought Wayne LaPierre to Buffalo back when Wayne LaPierre was kind of new. You know what I'm saying? And his story was like, I brought Wayne LaPierre, and Wayne LaPierre was like, man, what do I say to them? The black people. And my father was like, say to them what you say to anybody else, and he got cool stories like that. And he was involved in Scope, and one of his good friends, a guy named Bud Schroeder, who was my first training counselor. So I had a dad who was involved in this stuff going way back. He started a gun club in 1980 as a result of a guy named Joseph Christopher, who was this guy has a Wikipedia page where he was going on a serial killer, shooting people at bus stops, and community was up in uproar like people do. And so, one of the community leaders asked my dad to start a gun club, and he started the Dory Miller Rifle and Pistol Club, named after a World War II veteran, Dory Miller, who was on a ship. I forgot what the ship was during Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
And in one of the movies, Cuba Gooding Jr. played this guy, and he was a guy who grabbed the gun, went on the deck. He was a cook, but he grabbed the gun, went on the deck, grabbed the big gun, started shooting down Japanese fighters.
Wow. And
what made that act of heroism even more impressive was he was breaking the law when he did that. And
interesting.
Yeah. So he was one of my dad's heroes. My dad started a gun club named after this guy, and which is going to this day. And so I grew up in that gun club, and one of the things that he would do, he would also take inner city kids, who lived in the projects and stuff, and he would take them out to rural areas. You know, he had some land out in Springfield, New York. We had a couple acres, and so he would take us out there to hunt and fish and grow food, you know what I'm saying? And shooting was part of it. And so even as young as 11 and 12 years old, he taught me so that I would teach the kids. And so if you look on my website, there's a picture of me at 14 years old teaching a group of kids how to work.
Yeah, I've seen
22,
that one.
right. That's where that came from. That picture was taken in the 80s, the early 80s. So it was weird. I had a different kind of growth. I think that's why moving to Tennessee wasn't a big deal for me, where it was for other people, because my summers were, my winters were, Run DMC, and my summers were the Oak Ridge Boys, and because that's where I was living at the time, living out there with my dad sometime for weeks on end. So I would help him with permit classes and stuff like that, and he was also a reserve cop for the Buffalo Police Department. And so he would help a lot of police officers who couldn't pass the qualification course.
Okay.
So when I got on the department, there were people who knew my dad, and they would say my name right. You know what I'm saying? They was like, "Hey, Aqil, tell your dad." I said, "Hey," I'm like, there's people, who know me, and they were people that my dad had helped stay on the force, keep their jobs, helping them with the firearms thing. So I wanted to do something similar. So I would help people, do the same. As soon as I got off probation, I went back and, started trying to apprentice as a law enforcement firearms instructor at the academy and things like that. And spend some time hanging around those places, and they didn't just let you. You didn't just step up and say you were fine. You couldn't push the easy button. You couldn't take a test or a course, a 3-day course, and then say, "Hey, I'm a firearms instructor." No, you had to sweep brass, hang tigers, get coffee. You know what I'm saying, and watch what went on for a long time. And so, because of experience with him and experience there, I am a big believer in the apprenticeship approach to firearms instruction, because the stakes are too high. And so, helped with him, would do that, and did all that for a while, became a police officer in about 1992, did that to almost 2015. So I did 15 years on, took an early retirement and got out. But while I was a cop, I was part-time, half the time was patrol during the crack 90s. And the other half was as a detective, got a little burned out and was ready to be someplace where it was easier to be a gun guy. So I called myself moving down south. First I tried Virginia, but that was priced out. And then because I had moved my family down earlier before I even left. So then I got to Virginia, stayed there for about a year, and then we moved here. So when I got here, I picked up a job with a contractor who trains federal guards and law enforcement for Department of Homeland Security. So my law enforcement instructor credentials helped me get that job. Okay, so when I got on, though, I realized that I was a little rusty. And started, needing some more training because, when you get into these bubbles, one cool thing that happened was I actually had to use the gun, twice off duty in the neighborhood I grew up in, which was a rough neighborhood. And so I said, man, I got to get better at this shooting thing. And that's when I first in 98 went to Tactical Defense Institute in West Union, Ohio with John Benner. And back then, this would be, I think, even before Ella first got there. But David Bowie and I think John Motil was there at the time, and had my mind, I thought I was good, and I thought what we were doing was state of the art. And then I get down there, and because this is before you could see it on YouTube and stuff like that, so you didn't know. We were just, I was one of the best shooters in my area, and I realized that I needed to get better. The internet was fresh, getting on the internet, buying a big old, what was the one that had the boxes look like cows and stuff, Gateway, log on to, the internet, rec guns and all these things, and start talking to people about guns and stuff, what I was into, and finding out this place down in Ohio. So I went down there and got, completely rebuilt. So that's the backstory. That's going on in the background. Moved down south, came here to Tennessee, and was working on the contract, teaching, and a lot of the cops, a lot of the armed guards on these contracts, they're making 20-something bucks an hour as an armed guard for the federal government. They make $12 an hour as a Spring Hill cop. So they're moonlighting as cops, kind of like, what I'm saying? Like my dad back in the day, guys worked at the plant and moonlighted as a cop. If you wanted to be a cop, you couldn't feed your family on the cops pay back then, right? You had to go work at the plant, and then you would moonlight as a cop at night, or something like that, so that you could, if that's what you wanted to do for a living, if you had that drive in you. And so a lot of the guys on that contract were local cops, and they would say that the training that I was giving them was better than what they were even getting in departments, which makes sense if you think about the budgets, So I said, man, I got to get better and get these guys better stuff. There were a couple of them said, hey, man, I like the way you're training me. thinking about my wife, getting a permit or, would like to get a permit. This person, friends of mine. I said, okay, maybe I'll start doing permits, doing it with my dad. I'll do it here. And I spoke to a guy because sometimes I'd be in Memphis because it was a statewide contract. So sometimes I'd be in Memphis and spoke to a guy. He said, yeah, he said, well, you could go over to Rangemaster. They got a course. He said, but you can fail that one. And I had heard about Tom Givens and read some of his stuff. And I was like, that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
You know us. That's
challenge.
I want to go where I can fail because I know that's where the good stuff is. You know what I'm saying? So went over there and been running behind that guy ever since. So that was around 2008, 2009. 2008, I just took a class or two to steal, and audit, and get good stuff from him so I can make a better class. Then went, and Tiff was actually an instructor in that class, which is cool. You know what I'm saying? Actually, there was a later class. I went back to get more stuff because I took the class twice. Second time I took it, it was a guy named John Barb teaching, and Tiff was the assistant. And I saw, who's this girl, man? But she had a Glock 17 on each hip, and I remember my gun was laying on its side on the bench, but stocks were going towards the left. And I remember her walking by and flipping my gun over. Yeah, and I'm like, this bro, you know what I'm saying? Why now we teach that. You know what I'm saying? Now I understand the method behind it, but at the time I was like, she flipping my gun over. What's wrong with her? You know what I'm saying? But I was impressed that this girl is, and it's not that I see black women walking around with a Glock 17 on each hip. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, started following him, went down and took the instructor course in 2009. Became a range master instructor. And then after that, I just started following the dude around. And right around, I think it was 2015, 16, he asked me to AI a couple classes, and
assistant instruct, not artificial intelligence.
Yes.
For some people that may not
who don't know, assistant instruct, and now this is back in the day. I remember, man, TACCON was, now TACCON's, this big thing with 500 people in Dallas, man. At that time, it was at the mothership, what we call Range Master, his range, Tom's range down in Memphis on Mendenhall. I remember I would email Tom and go, hey, I'll just pay when I get there. Ain't no problem. Show up, pay Tom on the way in, in the room over there is like Claude Warner and Paul Gomez arguing about something, you just get to sit there and just soak up all this information, man, because it was literally the cognoscenti were there, you didn't have to say nothing. You could just sit there. There would be conversations happening between Chuck Haggard and somebody in the hallway that you could just learn from, you know what I'm saying?
Get the rub.
Oh, man, it was crazy. And so we just hang out in there for a while. But then one year after Tom left the mothership, he took it to Memphis PD. I don't know if he had moved yet, but it's Memphis PD, the Academy building, Memphis Academy, Police Academy. And I walked up to Lee Weems then, because on the internet it seemed like Lee was, to me, I didn't really know that much about John Hearn. I didn't know what Tiff was to him. I knew she was the girl running around TACCON taking pictures, but I didn't know what she was. But I was seeing a lot of connection between Lee Weems and Tom. And so I went to Lee and I was like, hey, man, it seems to me you're the heir apparent. What is Tom doing to pass this on to the next generation? And Lee was like, that's a good question. I'll ask him, and I said, and the other question was, what is he doing about, shotgun? Because I'm a big believer in that as far as urban defense. Yeah. And he said, you know what? He's coming up with something on that, though. And soon after was Tom's first shotgun instructor course, and I was in on that. But I don't know if that sparked it. Right around that time, soon after that, me and Tiff started hanging a little. There was, believe it or not, there was another guy named Aqil in the state of Tennessee teaching NRA classes.
That's wild.
His name was Aqil Bay. Yep. He's a special forces guy out of Fort Campbell. Good guy, good instructor, really good guy. I actually took one of his classes. It was weird. We walked in looking at each other like, that ain't really Aqil, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, because that doesn't happen to me. Yeah. So Tiff thought she was taking my class, signed up for his class. Yeah. Told somebody that we both know, hey, I signed up for this class with this guy with Aqil. I'll be down there. The guy Sam knew me. She knew Sam. And she was like, hey, Sam, I'll be in a class with Aqil next week. And Sam was like, I don't think Aqil got a class next week. And she, turns out she didn't. I didn't. She was with this other guy. So because she was in the area, I went down and had dinner with her, and, and we just started talking about, building together and doing stuff. And after that, it was just like things took off. She came around, she helped me put together a website. Man, I was trying to do all that stuff piecemeal, and she just came in and Tiff's like a Swiss Army knife. She's the ultimate hack, you know what I'm saying? In anything, you give her anything. And she has a knack she's a genius, you know what I'm saying? And she has a knack for codifying things, you know what I'm saying? So what she'll say is, I'll say, this is why we do this, and this is just a good idea. And Tiff would be like, no, this is this and this and this and this is why that's a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, what she said. Yeah, And so we realized that we had a lot in common as far as our beliefs and approaches, and especially coming from our community, and sometimes the dearth of good instruction in our community, especially with our people. And we both felt passionately about it because, we have a group of people in America who fought tyranny off here, escaped the things that we all want to avoid.
Right.
Totalitarianism, authoritarianism, and that's what slavery is.
Exactly.
And they did it not alone, but with the group of a coalition of all kinds of people came together to make that happen, And so we're big believers in that and our, playing a role in that. And again, one thing that I try to avoid politics like that, but just on a personal level, as my dad would say, that, the tyranny of the criminal element, and that happens especially in all areas, whether you're rural or urban or suburban, there's criminal elements that have to be dealt with. America has a huge criminal underground economy, and the criminal underworld that we brush by all the time, and you can live in a really nice neighborhood and not know that the guy next to you pays for his house using cocaine, and then some guys decide they want to rob him and they walk up on the wrong porch and that can be his problem can become your problem, and it happens all the time. So, or
the police get the wrong address,
all that kind of stuff, and all that gets caught up in
exactly,
in that kind of stuff. And so, but we are big believers in self-determination, and I don't see how you can do that in any way, form, or fashion without being able to defend yourself. And so
absolutely,
that's where we meet. And I had formed Citizen Safety Academy in 2015, had this big old silver logo and stuff. And I was, I'm from the hood, so. And she came in and polished my rough edges and smoothed me over. And it's been since then, at one point in 2017, I believe it was, Tom asked me to join the Range Master Cadre. I asked him, did Tiff, and he was like, he came to me one day. He's like, I'm under you. Do you think that it was Tiff? And I was like, I figured. He's like, no. He said, no. He said, I did ask her if she had an issue with it. He said, but no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't Tiff. That made me feel better.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be the guy who got on just because I was hanging with Tiff. So, hey, come on, Tiff. And whoever you got with you, you get that guy who hangs out with you, you bring him in too. Now, she grew up. She'd been Range Master since 2000, So
wow.
When she first walked
I didn't realize she'd been a Range Master that long.
Oh, yeah. She walked in. Tiff's story is crazy, man. Tiff walked into Mendenhall, South Mendenhall, and Range Master Mothership to learn about guns to be a better gun control advocate.
If you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to use deadly force to defend yourself or to defend someone else, then you're going to want a good legal team defending you after the fact. And that's why I trust attorneys on retainer. And if you want to see how AOR compares to those other CCW insurance providers, then scan this QR code or check out my affiliate link in the description. They have individual and family plans so that you will be legally protected should you ever need to protect your life or someone else's life. And don't forget to use promo code DAD to save $25 on your initial sign up. Yeah, I remember telling me about that.
Yeah. And so, that's to us, that's the quintessential Citizen Safety Academy story, because what our philosophy is, and I got this from a conversation I had with Kathy Jackson at TACCON years ago at the mothership was, we had a loose conversation, but then I read her book and it was something she said online, and she said that the best instructor should teach the new people. And so we're about, reaching, that's why the whole gateway thing is how to teach people who are new, but who might be apprehensive, who may not be from gun culture, who may not have been in the military, and I find, this is interesting, I find that I actually have to use some of these techniques with people coming out of the military. Let me give an example. My daughter got a new guy, right? My youngest daughter will be 26 this year. Okay, I'm an old guy. And she has me in D.C. She lives in the D.C. area in Arlington. And she says, "Here, I want you to meet this guy." So, I got to go do the job you're going to have to do one day, right? You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting across the table from him with my game face on, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I like him. He's a nice guy. You know what I'm saying? He's a Marine. He works for the Capitol Police in their IT department. You know what I'm saying? Her mother loves him. You know what I'm saying? Good guy. He's been helping her out and things like that. Her mother has some health issues and he's helped transport and stuff like that. Good guy, right? And so I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. I'm warming up. And then I said, so this gun thing, you know what I do? And he was like, well, yeah, I don't really like to deal with guns too much. Had some bad things happening. So sitting across from this guy, and he says this thing about, I'm not, the whole gun thing. I don't really, and I'm like, and I realized that people get programmed like that, man. This is a Marine. You know what I'm saying? So I look at my daughter and let me talk to you outside. How's this guy sitting in front of me? This is what we do. And my job is to provide and protect, and that's the job he's looking to do. So how does he protect?
Exactly, yeah.
And don't worry, we'll talk. So went back in and spoke to him in a way that I've been trained and taught by Tiff to some extent, to where he comes down, he takes the permit class with us, has a great time. I'm in Culpeper. They're not too far from that. Come watch what we do. He shows up, and now he's amped, you know what I'm saying, and ready to get into it.
Awesome.
And so I said that story to say that even with people who may have had some limited experience, there's still that, I remember one time when that same daughter, when she was young, living with her mom, she came to visit us in Tennessee, and she's like, now this is a girl who was been shooting her whole life, to the point where I had a, seafoam green MMP that was hers, and she would shoot. And then one day she comes in and she goes, I'm scared of guns. And I go, I clear it, take her gun out, restore it, clear it out, put her little belt on, put her holster on, and she wears it all day long, right? And then after day one, she was like, okay, I'm better now. I never forget it. She said, I'm better now. So she gives it back to me. I said, let me take it back, show it, clear it, everything good, save, and we put it away, Yeah. And that gave me something, that programming, that where does that come from? Where all of a sudden this thing where you're afraid of this thing, because this inanimate object, that I understand, should be treated with a certain amount of respect and as a dangerous tool. But but right next to it is a knife.
Right.
And so, our thing is keeping that door being a gateway as opposed to a gatekeeper, keeping that way open so that people are invited to come into this thing that we do, Taylor, because if not, and this is why I like David Yamane's work on, and that statement is heavy, that guns are normal, because what the goal is to make it, there are people who want to make it for whatever reason they have. Let's just say they just don't like them. Where people who deal with firearms are abnormal, weird, strange somehow, and we know that's not the case. Right. But if you haven't listened to it yet, his last he did a podcast with a guy who was kind of approached it like that, and David Yamane's arguments were so well articulated.
I'll check that out.
Oh, you got to. I mean, even if it's just to listen to how he puts it, man, because the one thing the guy made, for example, the guy made the point of, it looks like crime stats are going down. So why are people, why buy these guns? And David Yamane, addressed that first. And then he said, but I find an interesting thing. When the crime stats go up, nobody says go buy guns. Very well reasoned, calm, without a lot of emotion and everything. I was like, listen to it. So that to me is how we do this. And our approach is to, work hard, be nice to people, be inviting. One thing my dad used to say, and he's my first teacher, was the greatest compliment he would ever get from people after just being around them would be, I didn't know you carried a gun. Because that causes in their mind.
Exactly.
They have a picture of the gun owner, you know what I'm saying? And so when they run into somebody who they can relate to in every other way, that makes that a lot more palatable to them.
Yep.
And I believe that sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by not reaching across the aisle. And what Tiff would say sometime is, she gets this from what's Tony's last name? He does a great thing out in New Jersey. Second Amendment for everyone is his thing. 2A4E. Yeah, Second Amendment for everyone. His last name's gonna come to me. But reach 60%. We can't just go 50%. Especially us, because we're the people on the island. You know? Yeah. We need more converts. You know, we need more people to see it our way. You know, we need more people to understand why that what we do is out of love. You know, my dad used to say when people were ask him back in the day, you know, they would see him showing up in places that they weren't used to seeing him and things like that. And he said, you know, I'm not a person who gets upset when people ask me, you know, I don't usually see your type here. Why? You know, I love my children the way you love yours, you know. And most people understand and can relate to that, you know. And most of them will say, yeah, we all understand that.
Absolutely,
you know what I'm saying? It's fundamental. Yeah, all right, yeah. So a lot of times we find that we all want the same things, even sometimes the anti-gun people, some of them, or a lot of them, I'll say. We all want the same things. We just want to be safe. Want good schools for our kids. You know, we be talking on the way in. Want good schools for our kids. Want safe neighborhood to live in, you know what I'm saying? Be able to afford, you know, modest things in life. So sometimes our differences don't know how to get there, you know. And so what I'm saying is Second Amendment people, because part of our ministry is to, you know, the people who aren't, you know, in our group or who aren't a part of the gun owning American public. Some of our ministry is to them and some of our ministry is to us, because sometimes we hurt ourselves in the way we approach. And, you know, I think sometimes that if we were a little more soft-handed, you know, and understanding that sometimes, look at Tiff, you know what I'm saying? I mean, everything that she had heard in her life up to that point had convinced her that guns were the problem. Yeah. And it took a master instructor to say to her, in a way that she could understand and relate to, no, it's something else. You know, I have a lot of gun violence in my life. You know, 4 years ago, my best friend was murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina, while doing, you know, armed guard work at a casino. And he's one of several. My brother was stabbed to death, you know, with a knife. You know, when I was on patrol, I went to the call. You know what I'm saying? I saw his body. I didn't go out there, but I saw his body laying out there. I didn't go because I knew it was my brother laying out there, you know. But I didn't blame knives. You know what I'm saying? I knew that was a human that did that to him, you know. Yeah. And, you know, the question is why do we feel the need to do that type of stuff, which is something way beyond the scope of, you know, of what we're doing here. And I don't have answers for that. It's just putting the blame where it belongs sometimes can be a little difficult for some people, but sometimes the framing. And so I believe that we have to take into consideration that framing and use maybe a softer approach. And I think it starts with how we talk to people, how we present ourselves, you know, in a way that they can relate to us, being relatable. And so when we teaching new instructors, you know, notice how we'll come in with the Snoopy shirt. You know what I'm saying? You look like, you know, when I'm talking about, you know, if I'm introducing myself to a bunch of armed professionals, then I might wear my 511, you know, like 511 catalog just threw up on me, right? Yeah, you know, because I got to establish dominance over those guys.
The moment you walk in, they're like, oh, what boots is he wearing? What pants is he wearing? What
because I got to establish credibility with these guys. You know what I'm saying? And what I got to do, go out there, bing, okay, all right, now we'll listen to this guy. You know what I'm saying? All right. So, but when I'm doing with a bunch of newbies, you know, that just gives them a reason to not listen to me. I'm an alien.
They've stereotyped.
Right. And I'm not from a different planet. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so now, but when I come in and say, you know, I'm a grandfather, you know, I've got 3 grandkids, you know, got 6 kids, 3 grandkids. My back hurts. You know what I'm saying? You know, I've got bills like everybody. Right. Then it's like, you know, and I'm sitting there with, you know, Speedy Gonzalez, you know what I'm saying, in a pair of jeans.
Me, you, same.
At least, and I tell guys, I said, even for those of us who may not, why should I have to do all that? I said, listen, man, you know, we're people of tactics. Adjust your tactics. You know, do what you have to do so that we can get an advantage here. You know, is this really the hill you want to die on? You know what I'm saying? Let's figure a way around this. One of the stories we tell in our Gateway class and other classes about this girl who came to When Rafiq got married, my son Rafiq, was going to get married, and his girlfriend, or his fiance at the time, who not a gun person per se, was like, "Hey, Rafiq's dad teaches guns. Let's go do that. That's be crazy." A bunch of girls. He's part of the whole bachelorette thing. Let's go do something real crazy. Let's go take this gun class. So they all show up, and one girl is terrified. You can tell the only reason why she didn't pull out is because she didn't want to be the party pooper. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And she sits down. She comes to the class. She's practically shaking the whole time. There's a point where, to prime their hands for grabbing a gun later, I put blue guns in their hands. Plus, we also do that to see how they react. So that's an assessment. And is she shaking? Literally shaking. I'm asking her the whole time, anytime you don't want to have this thing in your hand, you can put it down, giving her agency, so that she controls how deep she gets into this pool. She does, she holds it though, but she's shaking, We get out to the range. You sure? I'm quietly coming to her. It's okay. I'll cover for you. Whatever you need. I'll take the blame. You'll be cool in front of your girls still. It's cool. She, no, I'll do it. And then I gave her what I call my gateway drug, which is at that time. Now I use Glock 44s. At that time, it was a Smith & Wesson full size MP22. And after the first shot, you could see the smile on her face because she thought her whole arm was gonna catch a flame, right? And, she shoots that thing, has a great time, takes pictures with us, smiling. In fact, that's one of the pictures on the Google. That group of girls. And so she sends her on, no problem. So we go to the wedding, and this young girl, jumps into my arms. I'm standing there with the wife. Wife's looking at me. I'm looking at the girl. I'm looking at her. Well, hold on. Let me find out what's going on here, and I'll report back to you. And it was her, and I forgot about her. And why would she do that? The only thing I could think of is a huge burden was taken off of her. Maybe something that she had been terrified of, she was no longer terrified of. And so one of the things I have to remind gun people is that, and this is me and Tiff do, is that guns are scary. They're normal. Guns are scary, and gun people can be scary too. Which is why you notice in our marketing, we try not to do the whole, nothing wrong with bearded, tatted, operator shit. But not for the newbies. Because I want to be, again, relatable.
Yeah.
So I thought that was so. That's the long, man. You got the long, but that's what we've been doing since 2015. We've been Citizen Safety Academy. The last couple years.
If you're interested in new innovative training tools, then you have to check out Ace VR. And make sure to use promo code DEFENDERS to get 1 month free. I'll admit that when I first heard about this device, I thought it was probably a gimmick and there was no way it would feel realistic. But the moment I put on the headset and held the controller, it was obvious to me that we had stepped into a new era of firearms training. Not only does the virtual reality environment accurately represent the real world, but the pistol controller has the same weight and feel of a real gun. And the trigger feels just like an actual trigger. With Ace VR, you can play several different game modes, from drills that work on the fundamentals of marksmanship to competitive stages, and even more entertaining modes that work on situational awareness. You can also compete with friends and others in the Ace community. And don't forget to use promo code DEFENDERS to get 1 month free.
My mentor, Tom Givens of Rangemaster, he does an instructor development class that is considered one of the best in the nation, rightfully so. But because he went itinerant, so he closed Rangemaster in 2016 and he hit the road. When he hit the road, he was doing a couple different classes. One was combative pistol, his fighting pistol class. There was a second level that called intensive pistol, which he doesn't do anymore. That one went away with the COVID, and actually not even the COVID, but the price increases. Back that was a class you can do back when 1,000 rounds of 9mm was $180 shipped to your door. You remember those days? Yeah, that's all gone. So, that class went away, but his instructor development class kind of blew up a little bit. So he makes more money doing that one, and that helps spread his gospel. So he's out doing that one. He has about a 15 to 20% failure rate, which is solid in his classes, because there are high standards. And so sometimes people would come to me because I AI for him, assist and instruct so much that people will come to me and go, "Hey, how do I do well in this class?" And my my answer off the top of the head is always, the first answer is take combative pistol, so that you can be exposed to his TTPs, his tactics, techniques, and procedures, and Tom's pace. You know, I don't know if you've ever taken the Tom Givens class, but there's no downtime. You know, Tom values time like no man that I know, and he believes I don't have enough time with you, so I've got to give you a lot. And I think it's great because it's the best value in that you'll get almost twice as much you get in other classes. You know, I mean, if you're not studying, if you're not shooting, you're loading mags. You know what I'm saying, and taking notes, and so he keeps it busy. To the point, he's an Iron Man. I mean, the guy does this all the time at 70 years old. You know,
Wow.
And you don't see him eat, and you don't see him sit down. You know, so I would tell people take combative pistol, and but the problem was he stopped doing them as much. It got to the point the last 2 years, in 2023 and 2022, there was only one class in Tampa near where he lived. So I flew down and audited the class so I could start doing my own version of it, because people were still coming to me going, hey, how do I get ready for this class? I put together a class I call Pro Social Pistol from John Hearn's, you know, the pro-social use of statutory violence. You know what I'm saying? You know, there's a good use of violence, you know, there's good use of pistol, like we expect with police officers. You want your police officers to show up with guns.
Yeah.
This is America, you know, so so I was doing that class. I had actually booked one or two of them and was doing one in Alabama. And Tom called, and you know, it was Saturday during lunch, which was cool. Timing's perfect, you know, heavens work with you sometimes. So go outside, hey sir, what's going on? He goes, what you doing? I said, I'm teaching my version of your class, combative pistol class. He said, I don't do that, teach mine. And I was like, roger that, you know, so that was late 2022, and immediately within a month we had like 10, 11 dates booked. Yeah.
Wow.
So at this point I've done maybe 23 of them.
Oh my gosh.
And I've got 2023, 23. No, that's wrong. I've done about 15, 16 of them. We've booked about 23 of them if they all take. We only had one that didn't take in Idaho last year, but I think it's going to take. The guy, Terry McLaughlin, really good guy, he said, we're going to schedule it again. We're going to get it full. And this year it looked like it's going to take. So I got to go to Idaho in September. And I'm looking forward to it. So great class, though. And, you know, getting out on the road, doing that, doing our gateway stuff. We still do NRA stuff because there's a lot of instructors coming through the NRA. And that's where we met you. Yeah, and then me and Tiff decided, as opposed to just complaining about the NRA and what they do, you know, let's do something about it. You know, there are guys, you know, thousands of guys coming through that gateway. How do we get them on the road right? You know, and so that's why, you know, the biggest thing for us is get you going. If we do it right, just like with our instructor, I mean, even with our pistol classes, the way I'm sure we teach is, we don't want our students thinking at the end of that class that that's it.
Right.
You know, so you need more, and you know, you need to do this, you need that, and so that whole whiteboard thing we do with putting names up there is just so guys can see the bigger industry, and people they may not have heard of. Go Google these guys, go look these guys up, go follow these guys, go train and study with these guys, so you can make yourself a well-rounded instructor.
Yeah.
Because your students deserve that from you, because of the nature of what we're teaching. We're not teaching people how to golf.
Right.
You know, so we still do those NRA classes. Like I said, we create our own gateway with Gateway Instructors course, which is us. Because with the NRA and the USCCA, which we were doing for a while, you know, we would still have to do their classes. We could tweak a little, but you know, for integrity reasons, we don't want to get too far from what they're doing, you know, in their classes. So we had to come up with our own. At first, it was a Gateway Instructor Development course. And then people would call and go, hey, will I get a certificate or some type of certification? And we like, who are we to certify anybody? You know, but people seem to want it, so we made it a certification course. But the first one we ever did was a development course. And there were people who didn't take it because it wasn't a certification course, you know. So we were like, okay, well, let's call it a certification course. And now we do a Gateway and certification course. We've also, God bless Tiff, she's codified what it takes to be an assistant instructor. As opposed to your good shooting friends hanging around and you know, giving advice on the line and stuff like that. Tips actually codified what it takes to what we think based on the program that was running the mothership with Tom, what an instructor is. And so we've got that, and we've got, instructor development type stuff. Like, we've got a class on how to create your own course, because we still don't have a class. I think ours is the only one that teaches you how to write a lesson plan. I think Mike Seeklander's might.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Seeklander's might. But he doesn't do one that often. I've been trying to catch his.
Yeah.
I was talking to Karen Whitlock this past week, and she was AIing for me, and she said she took it. And I was like, man, I'm jealous of you. I'm trying to catch that class for years. So, but
I had Mike on last Monday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good guy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been meaning to meet him. I say that just based on what I watch on the internet, because we're not friends or anything, but I would love to meet him because I'm a big fan of his work. His book is phenomenal. And anybody who asks me, what book as an instructor they should get, the first one I mentioned is The Art of Instruction. I think it's The Art of Instruction, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I said, you got to get that book. I emailed his company a while ago about, some lesson plan thing they had. Hey, get your email together. Email me back, man. It was like 2-3 years ago. Yeah,
I'll talk to Rich.
Yeah, I talked to Rich. In fact, I got to talk to Rich myself. Yeah. Maybe I ask Rich. So I hear Rich does the classroom stuff on that stuff anyway, is what I've heard. That's what Karen told me. She said Rich does the classroom and Mike runs the range.
I think, yeah, maybe.
Okay, so it was like in their book. It said if you emailed them, they could get you like the format for their lesson plan. And it was brilliant when I looked at it. And I shot an email off and never heard back from them guys. So I'm gonna hit Rich up. Rich asked me to be on his program again in another couple months.
Oh, cool.
Say, Rich, man, first send me that damn lesson plan thing so I can use it. But I think that they're phenomenal, and I think Mike's revolutionized the way I look at a few things. He really has. So that's what we do. That's here. We're still here in sunny climes of Middle Tennessee. I'm trying to find a place for us to, be able to put some dirt berms up. And I was in the process of doing that when the COVID hit and the prices went up and corporate America bought up all the houses in Middle Tennessee.
Or the Chinese.
And all the Californians started showing up, what I'm saying? So I was trying to get, I was talking to my realtor the other day, this nice lady who helps me out. And I was trying to, I said I was trying to be within an hour of the airport, you know what I'm saying? And she said, I don't know, maybe 90 minutes. So so we're still going to see what we can do. If we can scratch someplace else someplace for my tribe to call home, you know what I'm saying? So, but we still have the small classroom, and lately we've been doing on target shooting sports closed, which wasn't cool locally, but some of the guys went over to the firearms pharmacy in Lebanon, so they hit me up. So we're gonna be doing some classes out of there. We believe in crawl, walk, run, getting people up to where they can take a fighting pistol class from Mike Seeklander or Tom Givens or or whoever, or our thing is strictly focusing on the basics, because what I found, a lot of guys, what a lot of instructors think is basic training, is intro training, isn't.
Right.
If you got an intro to AR class that does not sit people down and zero the optic, it's not.
Brilliance in the basics. Really.
Because that's what it is.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so
everyone wants to be high speed, low drag, rolling around and stuff. And it's brilliance in the basics.
If your intro to AR class has you doing pistol transition to pistol, it's not. I'm sorry. We can talk about it over lunch one day, but because
shooting under nods.
Yeah. I mean, and I've driven like literally to places and taken, classes, intro classes from some of these instructors, man. And when I get there, the things that they assume that we know, that I may know how, but I'm writing down, you assume that I knew how, Bob. You assume that I knew how, Bob. You know what I'm saying? And you can't make those assumptions. And I even got that from the legendary Rob Hart, of Simtac, and him and his son Matt are going around doing wonderful work with shotguns. And Rob Hart is of that, he's of that generation between Cooper and us. The Tom Givens, the John Farnhams, the Louis Auerbachs, that's that generation. He's of that generation. Rob Hart is, and his son Matt is of quite capable of carrying his dad's tradition on. You go meet the son and see no, our son's good. Like we're in good hands. Rob has a worthy successor in his son, and they're the nicest guys in the world. But he said something in the class, man. He was like, you can't assume what your students know. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I teach with Range Master when I go to the Range Master instructor reunion, is to remind guys. I literally have a presentation called "They Aren't You." Mm-hmm. You know, where I remind guys, if you haven't taught it or you haven't assessed for it, then you assume they don't have it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, where they get it from? Mm-hmm. So if you're not teaching it and you haven't assessed for it, in somewhere in your class assessed for it, then we're
right.
You know, and I don't think that guys are being mean in that. I just think that we sometimes forget that road we took to get where we are as far as skill levels. And we forget all of the things all the things you're doing subconsciously. Mm-hmm. You know, even the vernacular.
Yeah.
You know, when you say rack the slide, you know, me and you assume that anybody we're running around knows what that means.
Yep.
You know, well, in a newbie class, I'm saying, you know, grab the slide, the back of the slide, you know, between your palm and your tips of your fingers. You got to pull it back, open your hand, and let it go. To the point where I'm speaking to Will Dugan, who is another range master, baby, one of those guys. John Hearn, Tiff, and Will Dugan were literally raised in range master. They're like kids, like teenagers in range master, you know, young adults, 20-somethings growing up in that environment, that rich environment. Those three have benefited from that greatly, and Will Dugan is one of them. He runs Top Gun Academy. There's a range Top Gun down in Memphis, and Will's the training director, and a fascinating man, and a wonderful firearms instructor, and phenomenal firearms instructor. And he told me that what do we call those slide serrations? Mm-hmm. You know what they were called before that? Mm-mm. Grasping grooves.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, why not? For a newbie.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, for a newbie. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, little things like that. You know, when he said it, I was like, that's why I hang with you, Will. You know what I'm saying? Because he's a big guy on the history of it. You know what I'm saying? In fact, I'm trying to get him to teach to give a presentation on how we got here at TACCON. You know, because I'm old enough to remember the 80s and watching magazines and, you know, before the internet. And, you know, but guys like you may not be. Rafiq, they don't know. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I remember when Glock was considered DAO. Because striker fire wasn't a genre yet.
Yeah.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was considered, if you looked in the magazines, go to a 1986, 87 Shooting Illustrated magazine or whatever, and you'll see Glock is listed as DAO.
They thought it was double action only.
What else would it be called?
That's hilarious to think about.
Can't call it single action.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Can't call traditional double action. Right. It was do double action only.
Wow. I guess, because they were thinking like part of the trigger pull is cocking, like slight.
Which it is.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
So
yeah.
On some level.
On some level it is. But now when you get pre-cock strikers now, but the point is, that was the first of the widely used striker fire pistols. Yeah. You know, I mean, there were striker fire pistols beforehand, but when it became a thing, when it became and so we remember that, you know what I'm saying, when and you know, when everybody who was serious about this thing carried a 1911 O'Brien high power, you know, in a Mill Sparks holster or something like that, you know. So, but grasping grooves, you know, and using things like that would anchor it for a newbie. So that's what we try to occupy that space and reminding guys, we all want to teach. I remember me and you having a conversation, and you were like, hey man, you know, what's going on, man? You know, us was conservative, 30,000 the whole country. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so what do you do when you get out? Like, I'm gonna hang out a shingle. You know how many guys like us are hanging out shingles, you know, to teach these things. You know, so yeah, I mean, you get into a glut market, man. And so, and one thing that was what, you know, that conversation, the actual conversation I had with Kathy Jackson made me think, man, you know what? I need to start looking at the wider American public. There's, you know, 350, 400 million Americans out there. Some of them don't have felonies. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, why aren't we talking to those people? Why aren't we being more inviting and getting them? And I'll tell you, for the longest time, I thought maybe I was, you know, out there. You know, no, let me say that again. Let me restate that. I knew I was good, but after a while, you start wondering, okay, maybe I'm, you know, maybe I take this stuff too serious. You know, maybe I'm tripping. Then that whole thing with the civil unrest and COVID and all that hit, and the phone blew up, and people who I hadn't talked to in years, even from Buffalo, calling me going, "Hey man, you still doing that gun thing? You know, I got questions." And I was like, "Okay, there's a need for this stuff." You know, and at the gateway level, there's a need for it. Gateway instruction is the largest part of the industry. It's also the least regulated to some extent. It's also the most neglected.
Yeah.
You know, yes, you have to set some things up to be able to capture them, to get people in, and you know, and permitless carry, which I support. You know, less restriction. I mean, less government hoops to jump through,
Right.
which we support. But it lets people feel like the urge to go down that hall. You know, or to go, you know, to us for instruction, because I believe, you know, TV, movies, and video games make shooting look very easy.
Yeah.
know? Yeah. And so I don't think most people think that they need it. You know,
Absolutely.
it's just the gun. But you pick it out, pull a trigger, and you know the problem goes away. You know.
Well, it's like you guys say in your classes, and I think you were the first one I heard say this, where people they've had thousands of hours of training, but it's through Hollywood, and they have this misconception about what is going to actually happen and what a gun is going to do or not going to do, or what the bad guy's going to do or not going to do, and it's very simplistic as well. You know, they don't talk about, you got left of bang, bang, and then right of bang. They don't talk about right of bang and the legal aspect.
The thing that got me from my incidents was I didn't see blood packs explode. Now, if you watch movies, TV, video games, you see the impacts. You know that person got hit here. You know. What do you do when you're pressing the trigger and
Right.
people are doing what they were doing, and you don't know if you're hitting? You know, because the behavior isn't changing, or the behavior they're continuing to do what they were doing, or they're doing it with even more vigor, or you know.
Right.
And me and Ryan have a class called Parking Lot Pistol now, and we did our first version of it, first 2-day version in Culpeper last weekend. And there's an exercise that we do, and the coolest thing about the exercise is people don't know when it's over. See, if I give you a closed loop program, you know, I get this from John Hearn. Draw and shoot 5 shots. You know when that ends.
Yeah.
Walmart parking lot, you're not sure when that's over. You know what I'm saying? It's not a definitive, it's not a closed loop.
Yeah.
And so you can see people going, is it over? And I'm like, perfect. You know what I'm saying? Because that ambiguity is what really goes on out in the real world, you know. What you mentioned as far as me saying that, you know, you've got thousands of hours of training. That was another thing I stole from the brilliant John Hearn, who he said, you know, he would ask in his classes, you know, who's been shot? And people go, you know, who shot somebody? And people go, yes, you have. Have you watched TV? Have you played a video game? Have you played any first-person video game where you shot somebody? That's training. That is forming I have never seen the Eiffel Tower. I have an idea what it looks like, though. You know, and where does that come from? From media.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't know better, you will form your reality around that media. And as long as it fits reality, you may actually be okay. The problem comes when it doesn't, you know, and you know that Dunning-Kruger curve, and you're high on what we affectionately call Mount Stupid. The goal is to come off of there before you're slammed off of there, you know, by a violent criminal actor or somebody like that. Unfortunately, some people found out that they were wrong, and that was the last thing they contemplated before they went to eternal sleep.
Yeah.
You know. So, but yeah, there's a lot of that, you know, it seems, you know, so easy, you know, and then unfortunately, you know, you get a lot of motivated students. Tom called them motivated students one day. It took me just about a year ago when I realized that's what I am. What got me off my butt in Buffalo was something bad happened, and it didn't happen the way that. Now, if I have an expectation that it's supposed to happen one way, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Unless I live that life, right?
Right,
Unless I'm
yeah.
out there in the street shooting people, And so what happens is you end up running into people who have been shot and they know what you don't know, which is I can survive this
And keep fighting.
and keep fighting. That's that edge. Like I tell my fighting pistol students, in either pro-social combative pistol, you got a problem. Good people. Which is not a problem until you run into people who, because of their lifestyle choices and where they've been, they may have an edge on you in that. You have to do something. You have to dress rehearse what they live.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
They've lived in the animal kingdom a little bit longer. They know the rules of the jungle.
And here you are walking out naked.
Like, hold on, I shot you. You're supposed to stop
and lay down.
That's the rules. Tag.
Exactly. And when they don't play by the rules, people feel like it's unfair. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not fair. You're supposed to lay down. You know what I'm saying? And while you're dithering in that, what John Furman would call dithering, what Tom would call fiddle effing, you know what I'm saying? While you're experiencing that reset in your OODA loop, they're moving, they're acting, they're doing something, they're taking advantage of that, And so the thing is, you have to start thinking about these things. You have to inoculate yourself against violence, in a way that doesn't mean you go out to bars at night and pick fights, but you have to look and see. And if you have a hard time looking at that, that's what they count on. If you don't have Dr. William Maple, the late great Dr. William Maple would say, if you have a parking space in your head for what people can do, the time it takes you to react to that can cost you your life.
Yeah.
And to the point where even in, it's the thing that I've re-studied, and I'll encourage you to go re-study Colonel Cooper, the modern technique. And what I found, and this is what Tom and the old heads know, is that those guys are brilliant, and those guys are freaking phenomenal shooters. I mean, their standards were out to 50 yards. You were expected to be able to do certain things at 50 yards with a pistol. Expected, and with those tiny sights too. They don't think about 1911 sights back then. They changed it and they went along, but they were able to do phenomenal things. But one of the things that I've been looking at Colonel Cooper stuff is I had to reimagine and rethink about even the color codes. I've always thought of the color codes as situational awareness, levels of awareness. That's one side. The other side is you're good people. You have, and you should have, emotional hurdles to doing great violence to another human being. That's how me and you can, operate as good people.
Right.
Is that we don't look to hurt people.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that when somebody's trying to hurt you? And so that's the other side of the color codes, is that while your situational awareness is going up, the mental barriers, the emotional barriers you have to doing great violence to people,
should be going
great
down.
Ruthless violence to people, has to go down. Now, some people get that in the military. Some people get that as police officers. Other people get that living in rough neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? You live in trailer parks, things like that. You grow up a meth head, or whatever, but average earth people who live a low risk profile life, well, where will we?
Right.
So when you run into people, when your paths cross from other people from those environments, and it often happens in watering holes, where the animals congregate, the predators, and the prey, when they have to go, when the prey know that there's crocodiles in the water, but they have to go because they have to drink.
Yeah, that naive little gazelle that
is in Walmart parking lot.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and we, if we haven't considered those things, taking them into consideration, which is why I like Tom's combative pistol so much for first level fighting classes, because it's half mindset, half skill, half shooting, half range. Because if the mindset's not there, this. Guys with a lot of skill, but if they don't have the proper mindset, you can be out there with somebody. There was guys that I would rather be out on patrol with who weren't as good a shot, but I knew they would freaking fight. And even if they weren't as good a shot, I knew they would freaking at least pull it out. When I was on patrol in 1997, a guy I worked with, Skip McDougal, was killed on duty. He was murdered. I personally believe that he had this thing for Pontiac 6000. And there was a chop shop nearby he had a thing for screwing around with this chop shop that was mixing the VINs on Pontiac 6000s to the point where he was a smart guy and he would study, that VIN doesn't go with this body type, like this fender here, you know what I'm saying? And they were, doing this with stolen cars. Mm-hmm. And I believe they hired a guy named Jonathan Parker to murder him. And so, and that's what he did.
Wow.
Went to a fake call and Jonathan Parker shot him, killed him. We rolled two to a car because where we worked was pretty hot at the time. And when the other cops got there to the scene, they couldn't find Skip's partner, Mike Martinez. They eventually found him under the patrol car. He never cleared leather. I'm saying leather at that time. Yeah. We had leather holsters.
Right. Yeah. He never drew his gun.
Yeah. This is back in the day. We had a Leslie holster. A Leslie holster maker, which was fabulous. Have fabulous work. Old world Italian craftsmanship. He happened to be in Buffalo, so we were fortunate enough that we all, as our duty rigs were Leslie holsters. Some of Leslie, and simple thumb brake though, and he never even drew his gun. And that was my first lesson in real, that mindset. If the mindset's not there, then the tools don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tools don't matter. So,
what is your experience in fostering that mindset?
The best ways to? Look at it. We have something that I didn't have back then. You have surveillance video from everywhere. Badge cams. You can... I use the term in my classes, violence inoculation. When I say inoculation being you take a weakened version of something you have to deal with, you inject it into you, and your body develops antibodies and methods to fight it, methods to deal with it. Violence inoculation, take a weakened version. You weren't there when that guy robbed that guy and shot him and killed him, but you saw it through the surveillance video. And an important part not to get left out of that is you figure out how to win. You war game it at that point, and you learn from the mistakes. And I think that is the best way to honor the fallen. The reason for watching the Kyle Dinkeller video, you've seen it, right? Is to learn. I think that there's no better way to honor Kyle Dinkeller than for other law enforcement officers and regular people to not, lose their lives the way he did.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we meet him again, that we can say, thousands of people, weren't murdered because of your sacrifice. So I think that a violence inoculation is a way to do it. But it's important that and that's why I support John Correa's Ask channel. I think John Correa is good on that.
Those are good.
Yeah. It's because he tells you how to win. You know what I'm saying? Whether you agree with his techniques, procedures, I believe that John Correa is smart enough, well-trained enough, and knows stuff enough that there's more than one right way to do this, and it'll work.
In terms of breaking down videos like that, he's doing more than anyone I know of.
Oh, by far.
Yeah.
By far. To the point where every time I get a moment, sit with him. After your girl in the gun conference a couple of weeks ago, I was able to pick his brain, and he was always generous, man. He's a very generous man, and always happy to help and share his idea. One day I messaged him. I was like, what's the longest civilian gunfight you've seen? And he said he saw one 12 seconds long.
Wow.
That frames it right there. He said occasionally they'll go to 7, 8. He said 90-something% of them 1 to 5 seconds. People need to know that. And now we need to work that 1 to 5 seconds is not that fast to you. Now it's, how to slow that down to do what you got to do. Another aspect in getting into the mindset thing we like to teach is accept the fact that you might be hurt. I'm going to tell you what the criminals know. You'll survive. The area of the part of the human body that needs to be impacted is the mediastinal. If you can move your mediastinal, just like we aim for the mediastinal because we want, to stop him as soon as we can. If you can move yours, there's a good chance you'll survive. And the fact that you've been hit doesn't change your task. You have to do what you have to do. And Ryan is, Ryan McCann is extremely, he gives a talk that'll get you going, because that's Ryan's thing. Ryan can talk, and that's Ryan's thing, but it's freaking brilliant because, one day he was talking, he says, you watch these videos, police activity, these police shooting videos. He says, sometimes the first thing you see is what John Hearn calls emotional shooting. With both guys are just going back and forth, whacking the trigger as hard as they can, hard and fast as they can, with what John calls the magic bullet theory, which means somewhere in this magazine, I'm going to hit the bullet that's going to stop this fight. I just got to, if I press my trigger fast enough, I'll get to it before he gets to his, right? There's the race to the magic bullet, right? So he said, but one guy, he said, what you'll notice is that sometimes in the protracted gun battles, meaning, there's actually bullets going back, and now we're getting past that 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds. One of the guys, usually the cop, who's more trained, will accept that he might get hit and start working his fundamentals. And you're hearing going from pop to pop, 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 and then the fight's over. Because he actually settles down, starts doing dials in, sees his sights, sees his fine aiming reference, whatever it is, starts working his trigger properly, start making anatomically relevant hits, and then the fight's over. The goal is to getting guys that recognize that and getting to that point faster. So that's a part of it. All of that is a part of what I think people need to, we do kind of case studies in combative pistol. One of the things we look at, and it's fascinating. I knew Tom was a big fan, and then I started looking into it myself and I'm becoming a bit of a FBI, 1986 FBI firefight head. For no other reason, the two criminals are fascinating. Those guys met at Fort Campbell as military police officers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Platt and Maddox met right up here in Kentucky, right at the Tennessee border, man, at Fort Campbell as MPs.
Wow.
Yeah. Maddox did 4 in the Marine Corps and was now in the Army. Yeah, I mean, like, these weren't crackheads with ravens, what I'm saying, or cheap guns, what I'm saying. I mean, these were good guys who went bad, and it happens,
Wow.
And I mean, like the one guy, Maddox was also, his family was profiled in a Christian magazine. Well, he was a church-going guy.
What in the world?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, at the same time, posthumously, they are the lead suspect in each other's wives' murder. Like, when I tell you it's a crazy story,
Oh, gosh.
it's a crazy story, yeah. So, but there's a lot to be learned in that one incident. There's a whole lot of lessons to be learned, and Tom fleshes them out pretty good. So,
Yeah. So going back to Citizen Safety Academy, I think you guys were one of the first civilian classes I'd taken, because I'd taken obviously classes in the Marines and in law enforcement, and then Chris Norval told me about you guys, and like I remember even looking on your website and I was like, what is this? Because going back to that, like, it wasn't what I was used to, right? It wasn't the type of course that I was used to, and then when I went to the class, still I was like, okay, what is this? But it was fantastic. It was phenomenal. I mean, the instruction and the way you guys broke everything down, and it really changed my paradigm on, again, like you said, the gateway instruction and bringing people over to our side, because the hardcore rah stuff is not going to be attractive. In fact, it's going to scare most people off, and then we're just gonna be an echo chamber with the same people, and so yeah, it was great, and but it was just so interesting for me to be in that class and be like, oh, okay, I understand now.
I'm glad you actually were able to make the shift, because some guys can't. Like, there's guys who, I tell them, like me and Tiff, one time we taught a class in Memphis, and afterward we get reviews. We always ask for reviews, and we read them even if they hurt our feelings. And one guy was basically like, well, if I got to do all that kind of feely touchy stuff, man, and I don't think I want to be an instructor. And at first we were hurting, and we were both like, wait a minute, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? At this level, that doesn't mean that there's no place for you in it. It's just at the gateway, at the door. No, we don't want the mean people at the door. No, and I'm joking, calling him mean, but we don't want the people who don't want to, who don't feel like they can do those kind of things at the door. once you get to you're a Marine, and so your instructors are talking to conscripts, you know what I'm saying? And when you're a cop, you're talking to rookies. They can't get up and walk out, you know what I'm saying? We have to deal in an environment where people can literally get up and walk out and say, this is crazy. I never want to see you again. You hurt my feelings, which is funny because, it's, for years doing the gateway thing, like, okay, this is all about the fields. But it's funny when I do government ranges, you know what I have to do? All right, everybody, take a deep breath. You've been there. Job is on the line.
Yep.
Promotions. And even more importantly, I'm going to be embarrassed in front of all these guys if I suck here today. And especially American men, we will die before we will lose face. Saying, we can't do it, And so I have to tell those guys, take a deep breath, relax, man. It's 90% of shooting. Doc Phil Fogel just gave me this one a couple of weeks ago. 90% of shooting is mental, and the other 10% is in your head. You know what I'm saying? And get guys relaxed.
These devices reset your trigger after each shot so that you can dry fire just like you live fire in semi-auto. Plus, the Blackbeard fires a laser out of the bore so that you can track your shots and work on height over bore offset for close engagements. And the Blackbeard X uses an accelerometer to track and analyze the motion of your gun on their Mantis X app. Even the United States Marine Corps saw the training value in the Blackbeard X and began to utilize these devices in basic training. So now Marine Corps marksmanship coaches can analyze recruit shooting performance using the Blackbeard in order to make them better shooters. So stop wasting time with traditional dry fire, order yourself a Blackbeard or Blackbeard X today and start training to a higher standard.
So it's funny, I'm finding out that that's the case, but a lot of guys aren't able to make the shift, and you were able to, whereas me, I had to make the shift from law enforcement. Even the gun handling. Our gun handling as cops is suspect sometimes, you know. I remember taking Tiff to a government range just so she could see what goes on. Her mind was blown. She was like, she was about to run down and get people back in the host. I'm like, Tiff, you can't do that out here. You're a spectator. You're not even supposed to be here. Go in the back and sit down and be quiet. She almost like had a conniption, man, because she just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is what's out here, I was just teaching at Jeff Bourne's place down, and he's doing really good stuff. Jeff Bourne is, man. He's advanced. He's one of those guys advanced in the art. He sends another one who sends me a lesson plan and a drill once a week. I've got a Taylor file, and I've got a Jeff file. And when I get time, if I'm up at night, I go look at you guys' stuff. That's why you see me like respond later on. Yeah. I'll sit there and go through about 4 or 5 of them. Man, thank you. Keep sending them. I look at them. I do get to them. And I'm gonna tell you why. It's because I'm a student. I'm a student first. Yeah. I'm a lead instructor at Citizen Safety Academy, but I'm a senior student, and I'm a student of what we do, this thing that we're into, and you guys are 2 brilliant guys doing good stuff, opening. So you guys are both looking at that whole eye thing about the same time. You know what I'm saying? In different ways though, and so I'm not that guy who thinks if I have a talent, it's seeing smart people and getting good stuff from them. You know what I'm saying? That's what I consider my talent. Yeah, that's my talent. Recognizing genius, you know what I'm saying? And then getting good stuff from them. And Tiffany. Seriously, and being around smart people and letting them say smart things around me and then going, and then going talking to people who don't know. You know what that egghead over there said? Blah, 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 blah. And they love me. Because I got it from a real smart person. You know what I'm saying? So, you and him is sitting up, at night and the stuff that's driving you guys crazy and you putting it together on paper and lesson plans and videos, can't sleep, got to get it out. And I'll sit there like, yeah, Jeff, you should see what Taylor just sent me. Look at that. What do you think about that? That's good stuff, isn't it? You know what I'm saying? And I love it because that kind of environment generates more ideas, and this is how we advance what we do. And God bless America that we're in a place that we can. Yeah. And I got to thank John Farnham for that one, because some guy was like, John Farnham, what if a guy comes to a class and he's got, a sky gun and this and that? And John Farnham said, fall to your knees and thank the God, thank God that you live in a place where they can have a crap gun. You know what I'm saying? And he's got a point. There's places you go, there's David Hernandez, teaches for us. Yeah. There's one gun store in Mexico.
He told me that. I thought that was
it's tiny. Yeah. And it's tiny. When he said that, I was like, are you kidding? He was like, yeah, it's small.
And isn't it like run by the government or something too?
So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be like, Big Daddy Outdoor. It's going to be like 3 stories high. And, it's going to be big as Walmart.
Costco for guns.
It's going to be Costco for guns because it's the only store in Mexico. He's like, nah, Aqil's about as big as this office. I'm like, are you crazy?
And they probably have the smallest number of gun sales in Mexico too.
But everybody's got guns, which is a lesson in this stuff. So
I'm saying the store has the smallest number compared to all the other people.
I agree. Anyway, you go to the guy standing on the corner over there got a bigger array. Probably pulls out I got better selection than they got. What do you need? I got it right here for you. So, but a lot of guys coming out of the mill, and Tom talks about this sometimes, coming out of the mill in law enforcement aren't able to make the transition to teaching civilians as well. And after those guys don't have value, they just, we like to be the kind of guys, let me get people ready for you, because my mentor is not a gateway instructor. I love him, but he's not. Now, he creates the environment, but he's at a point where, that he doesn't have the patience for him. But I have to remind guys, okay, and some of the people that I care about and love, who are phenomenal firearms instructors, but I have to remind them this is a different context. You know what I'm saying? The military context is a different context. Shooting people in Mosul is not shooting people in Murfreesboro. The law enforcement context, it's a different context.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have qualified immunity anymore. You know what I'm saying? These kind of things, and getting guys to understand. For example, I had a long talk with a really nice lady, Michelle Sereno, at the conference last weekend at the Mingle, and she's a writer for some gun publications, and I think at one point she was married to Sereno the shooter, but she was asking me about low ready and high compress ready, I believe that high compress ready may be okay for vets, or military personnel, in theaters of war, or even cops. But what is a civilian doing? For a civilian, where that gun's pointed at something? What is it? The gun is always pointed at something. You need to know what that is. And with a maximum ordinance of a mile, and you're at high compress ready in Walmart parking lot, what is that gun pointed at? While you just had to use it and you're nervous as hell and your fingers resting on the trigger. You cook off a round. You would like it to go into the asphalt. And she got it, but you could see her processing it, because why do I say that? It's because I'm sure a lot of the guys that she's trained with, when you're done shooting, you do what? You bring the gun back to a high compress ready. Like I said, which is fine in some places.
Well, you also were one of the first instructors that was teaching drawing to the low ready.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because most people only build reps drawing to out on target. They don't build reps drawing to, well, I don't need it yet, but I might need it in a second. And so I thought that was, for me, it was revolutionary for you to be talking about that. And because I'd never seen it before. And coming from only seeing drawing to on target, kind of looks funny. It's like, that's weird. But then you're like, oh, well, it makes sense. And in almost every law enforcement context, that's how you should draw as well.
Unless you are literally going to put rounds on the target.
Which is almost never.
Right. And we do this thing in parking lot pistol. We have an exercise where we, even drawing to target, slacking out the trigger. We always get several people in every class who go click. That's dry. But because their heuristics are a thing. And they're so used to coming out and click that being able to draw, take the slack out, be prepared, or touch the trigger and be prepared to fire, but a lot of people don't have that technique down. So drawing to a low ready, and I'm gonna tell you what hit me. Okay, I'm like you, raised the cop, taught a cop the whole thing, right? Cop early, like you, get out of military, law enforcement. I came out of high school almost, play a little college football, got a girl pregnant, mom said you got to get a job, go become a cop. So I was at TACCON at the mothership, and Craig Douglas was doing evolutions upstairs. And there was ambiguity going on, and I watched Chuck Haggard do it. He had a blue gun on in a holster, and he just went, and I was like, I don't know, my mind, I was like, that was the dopest. I was like, look at that. Because he didn't know what was going on, but he knew he had to have, it was smart to have the gun out, you know what I'm saying? Because he was feeling threatened. I forgot what was going on, but he was feeling threatened, but he didn't know exactly who to shoot yet. You know what I'm saying? And so instead of waiting, he could have rested his hand on the gun, but instead of waiting, he drew the gun out to a low ready while he was observing. And for some reason, I saw that and I was like, that's a missing piece.
What's nuanced?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
It's not the simplistic, oh, beep, shoot.
Which is what parking lot pistol was all about. Yes. And it was that came out of a conversation me and Ryan had. Ryan said, I love bill drills. He said, but this thing where we draw, point the gun at a target and just hose it, we got to do something other than that. We got to bill drills have a place. Yes. Drawing and hosing the target, with 4 or 5 or 6 shots has a place. The problem is we're not training and teaching the other stuff in those situations where you shouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a reason it's called a drill.
Right.
And because it's just that. It's just like in wrestling when you shoot and you just practice shooting over and over again.
Right.
You're practicing a drill.
Right.
Now the full picture is, okay, you had to think when to shoot into that. I should pick a different sport with not the word shoot in it.
No, but you got to point it so the gun don't shoot. But 100%. And something I give Brian Hill credit for. One day I heard him talking. He said, "Good decision making is more important than good marksmanship." Which kicked me back to Paul Gomez's. After we get the fundamentals down, we have to make people who think with a gun in their hand. And so, where does that begin? And that's our parking lot pistol is our attempt to get people. We have a tendency to just shoot faster, which is great. The question becomes, okay, now what if we can't? Because we're not shooting. I'm a big fan of Daryl Bolke and Wayne Dobbs' whole shoot at assessment speed. Because in the real world, it takes a third of a second for us to read what's going on downrange. See, in a range, we have a berm or a bullet trap, and we know where the bullet's going, and we just got closed loop programs. In Walmart parking lot, things are evolving. There's information coming in. Getting back to that, people don't know when it's over. You know what I'm saying? If there's information coming in, and you have to react to that.
Right.
Which brought me to a quote. And you say, I hang around with smart people with Lee Weems when he was like, you're shooting into the past.
That's good. I like that a lot.
Consider that you are shooting into the past, which means that things are evolving. And what might have been okay then might not be okay now. Or it still might be okay, but the landscape's changed. It's not there anymore. You know what I'm saying? Something else is there. There's something between you and it.
Yeah.
There's something beyond it. There's something around it that even if you still do it, you still have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, because if you decided already that I'm going to drop 5 rounds into this person, your brain's already processed that, and so you're going to just do it. And they could have already moved, and now those last 2 rounds went behind. It didn't even hit him. My buddy Brad Frederick from Surviving the Street podcast, he did a video on his YouTube channel about this where he had targets. He was shooting with sim rounds, and they would drop at certain points, and so he would just shoot till they drop, and then he would show how even you would think it's falling slow, but it's really not. Those would be like one round that would would start to almost stitch up, and then one would go over the head or something like that. Yes. So it's very important. What was it? Masai, he talks about this in his book where people get shot in the back during defensive shootings, and how he would help explain how that works with reaction time and how quickly someone can turn and stuff. And going back to the thinking and shooting part, I think that's so true because that is part of mindset, right? Yes. It's not just being able to switch it on and activate your ability to kill or fight and defend or whatever, or stop the threat. Right. But I think it's also the decision making and not just blindly going through the motions. And I'm reading Dustin Solomon's book, Building Shooters, right now. Yeah. Great and book. I love how he talks about, one of the first portions of the book, he talks about how in the competitive shooting industry, or even, just the idea of getting faster and faster and faster and faster. It's you can put a lot of energy into that and getting really, really fast, but it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy and resources. And you only have so many hours in a day. So if you're only putting all your energy into going fast, well, now you're sacrificing putting energy into thinking. Right. And that's a really delicate balance, especially in law enforcement. Now, law enforcement, I wouldn't say is the fastest either, but they're being pulled in so many different directions with in-service training.
Right.
I mean, our in-service training when I left, we didn't shoot, and for defensive tactics, we didn't even fight. We had PowerPoints for our or not defensive tactics, but use of force. Use of force was just a PowerPoint, which is just so bizarre. But
it should be Sims, but yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
Well, I've said before, I think that if you take the department's ammo budget, I think 80% of that budget should go towards Sims.
Yes.
And then the rest should go towards ball ammo. Well, ball ammo and the defensive ammo, right? But once you get people shooting, right, getting rounds on paper, bare minimum, right, 80% qual, whatever you need. At that point, okay, now we're going to use Sims and shoot people.
Yes.
Half of you go down range with sim gear on, half of you up range with your sim guns. Just shoot a standing target, where we've now transitioned from a paper target to an actual 3-dimensional target. Turn sideways, shoot them. Turn around, shoot them. And get used to those shooting in 3 dimensions. Kind of like what, I'm drawing a blank on his name, on Killing.
Grossman.
Yeah, Grossman. Kind of what he says about, and I think it was Vietnam, where they started using the humanoid targets, and they noticed the hit factors going up from the bullseye targets. So it's kind of like the next evolution of that. It's like, okay, we got used to shooting these humanoid targets. Now we're going to shoot each other, and now shoot the person coming towards you, a knife in their hand.
Right.
Now they're jogging towards you. Now they're running towards you, and just kind of slowly build. But what I've noticed is we just shoot at cardboard, and that's all we do. And then maybe every so often we'll do force on force. And then the force on force we do is an entire day dedicated to it, and you might get one scenario in.
Yep.
And it's just a logistical nightmare.
Me, Howard Marbury, Jeff Boren, and those are the guys. And John Hearn talks about this stuff, and Holshin talks about this stuff a lot. We shoot in a 2D world, and then when you get into a 3D world, there's that stimulus, as you were saying. And it's funny, I have a PowerPoint presentation. It's funny you say that in fighting combative pistol, where I try to at least expose people to the concept. You know what I'm saying? Because before we can even train it, we got to expose you to it. I took Carl Wren's Force on Force instructor last year, and before I took it, I was of the impression that Force on Force was something for advanced students. He completely disabused me of that.
I want to hear more about that.
I am of the belief now that there is no true analog close to the Force on Force. Good, well scripted Force on Force. Well scripted and well deployed or acted Force on Force. Because the only thing worse than no Force on Force to me is bad Force on Force. Because bad Force on Force can give negative, heuristics, or people give them bad habits, scare them. One of the things Ed Monks talks about is, of course cops aren't going into buildings where there's active shooters. Every Force on Force, every active shooter training they did, they went in, some guy jumped come from under a pile of bodies, or jumped out of a locker and shot him. And that's never happened in an active shooter event. You know what I'm saying? Let's make the active shooter event as realistic as we can. If you haven't taken it, you should. Ed Monk's class, he actually invited me to take it years ago. He comped me, and I went simply because I liked Ed, and Ed was comping me. I didn't see myself, having anything to do with that. I enjoyed that class so much and got so much out of it. I came back the next year with friends. Literally, it was that good.
Wow.
Ed Monk is doing something very different with that, and it leads into that whole Force on Force thing.
Where's he teaching it?
Arkansas, this place right outside Little Rock. Jeff Boren is working on some of that stuff. He's fortunate enough down out in his county where he works that the county is actually arming school administrators, and so his job is to train them. And so what I'm going down this weekend to do is he's doing reality-based stuff and Force on Force stuff, and we're trying to develop. There was a place in Indiana called Mindset Labs, and all these guys did was Force on Force, and then it closed. And I'm hoping that we can do something similar, because I think that more people learn. Tom, I'll give you a quick story. Tom, Craig Douglas, and William April used to do something called Establishing a Dominance Paradigm at Royal Range, and they did it once a year, and the ticket was like $900, man. People would show, but it was phenomenal. Tom on guns, Craig doing evos, which is what he does, and he's a master at it, and William April getting in your head. You know what I'm saying? Who are you with a gun on? Who are you in these situations? And they set up, these wonderful evos. I mean, I remember being in the, Royal Range. They pulled a car on the Royal Range. They can do that, which is cool about Royal Range. They pulled a car in there, and Craig worked like 20 minutes on a half hour on the lighting just to get the lighting and the shadows right. That dude is a monster, right? So we're robbing people, and I mean, and the biggest deal is not just making it a hose fest. It can't just be paintball,
right?
You know what I'm saying? We're just shooting at each other. No, it's got to be about decision making. You know what I'm saying? And one of the things Craig says that has to be at some point non-shoot wins, for example. But imagine if you took police officers you was describing, and I learned so much doing that I really began to believe that this is what we're missing. Is that the story was one of my students took the class, a guy named Cameron Martin, a good friend of mine, and after the class he said, "I wish I'd have taken something like this earlier because it would have made me have different decisions on what I took as I went into my shooting career. I would have took classes that prepared me better for this.
Yeah.
The decision making, and I thought that was brilliant. And so now I'm a believer that right after a permit or an academy, like you're saying, once you can operate the gun enough to get it out between you and somebody else and, just hit a man-sized target, that kind of thing, now we should start getting you into the good decision making.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like the opposing will, and there's nothing like, good actors, who know what they're doing, and people moving around like people and making decisions like people, and you reacting to that. I think that is the way to go. I think that's another way. So there's let's make myself let's get my technical skills as to the peak they can be, to whatever the highest peak I can. What do I do about getting my decision-making skills to that level too? And the only way I think to do that is the best way, not the only way, the best way to do that is good, well-scripted, well-done force on force. And so I'm hoping that, and what I learned with Carl, man, Carl can do a Evo in here. And he was putting stuff together, and it was crazy watching him work. He was like he would tell everybody something different, and then just be a person, just be a human being, you know what I'm saying? So on one of the Evos, Miko's Beach, right? Miko's Beach is out of he's a good friend of mine in the training industry. Memphis Beach. Go by Memphis Beach.
Yeah.
A phenomenal shooter, good, and one of the best Marine, one of the best guys you ever meet. And he just told we were brothers, and we ran a store, and people were coming out the store, and I'm just running the cash register, and then some guy walks in, pulls a gun out on Miko's, and and then I don't remember drawing the gun. All I remember is lining up my sights. He had the mask on, the paintball mask, and there was mesh on the back, and then there's that line of thick plastic to hold, between the mesh. And I remember saying to myself, I'm gonna line up the sights on that so I don't hurt him, And then I don't remember firing. I remember hearing it though, hit him, and I remember hearing people go ooh, right? He called the Evo. All he told was that, turns out this guy, his job was, Mikos was screwing his wife, and he was going to go in there and settle the score, and watching people move around in that and find out what they thought and how they figured things out and what they saw, fascinating. And the only person I know who could really pull that stuff out like anybody was William April. You had watched him asking people questions after Evo's, like, why'd you do this? You did this. You hesitated, and then you did this. Why'd you do that? Flushing that kind of stuff out in people's heads, so that you kind of know who you are with the gun in your hand. A lot of us don't know. And I think the only way to find that out would be the best way to me to simulate what goes on in real life is Sims. With good stuff. We're in the process of trying to, for example, I'm going to Tactical Response to take their fight. One thing they've done it a lot. And so I know that there's going to be some stuff there that's going to be, some really good information.
They probably hashed out things along the way. If you do it that much, you figure out stuff.
And I'm thinking if I can get a group of guys who like maybe once a month, one thing that they used to do, they don't do anymore, which is phenomenal, was the NTIs, National Tactical Invitational, which John Holshin won like 2 or 3 times, you know, saying he's a freaking monster. But where they would actually have role players, you know, and you actually go into a town, you know, and you'd have to go get your dry cleaning, and you have to go over to the store and everything, and you run into different situations. It wasn't always a shooting. Sometimes it was just, you know, medical thing, but just putting people in real situations, you know, as close as you can so they can make real decisions and figure things out.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, man, we're hoping that we can get a group of guys who train up really well, because you don't need a whole lot of scenarios. In fact, you want some of the same scenarios. Why? So that you can see how different people do in them.
Exactly.
And you can gather the data and put stuff together. So we were thinking about, we like to put a group of guys who like once a month maybe, you know what I'm saying, put on like a mindset labs type thing. In fact, I'm trying to get in touch with those guys to see if they have any advice or if there's anything they could share, anything we can buy from them, and say, hey, but putting those kind of things on so that people can come and really, really learn. Because, I mean, during the EDP, there was one guy, me and a friend of mine were panhandling, kind of, and then we walked up, we robbed him. He was getting in the car with Tiff. Tiff was acting
I'm just
like
going to
she
cut
was
that
drunk.
part out right there, and that's going to be the hook.
Okay.
They're like, who's he interviewing today?
Just went up and robbed him. You just
Sorry, I was just sitting there thinking to myself.
That's awesome.
Doesn't think he's talking about role
You
play.
should too. That's good stuff. That you should too. Man. And
Go ahead.
So the cool thing was Craig would have me do stuff like just walk through with a hoodie, through the Evo with a hoodie on.
Yeah.
Just random, and it was literally the what do you call it? The RBG. What it is? The random black guy who just walks through, and you would see people go, start reaching, he's just walking by. Yeah. Freak him out, literally, because I just walk by, look at him mean, and keep walking,
Yeah.
and they would just, and so one guy, he had 2 quick stories. One guy, he's bringing, the thing was, you and Tiff went out. She's a coworker. Y'all just went out. She got a little tipsy. You put in her car. You're gonna take her home, drop her off, and we rob you.
Yeah.
Right. Me and Scott Oates, who is Craig's another Navy SEAL and phenomenal dude, but we're robbing people. And I come on one side, passengers. I come on the driver's side. He gets on the passenger side at some point. So anyway, one guy was going to go for his gun, and I cussed at him. I yelled and cussed at him, and he freaking froze. He just stood there. We got in the car, started up, and played like we drove off with Tiff, and he stood there, completely froze. And guys were kind of like, because Craig played it up on the big screen, and Craig was like, "Man, you got to do something." I think it's better that guy find that out there than in the real world. Now
It's better die 1,000 times in a force-on-force scenario than get that situation in real life.
Now the flip side is we had a guy we called Mark the Dark, who's an anesthesiologist out of Chicago. And Mark would come down and win almost every year.
Well, he's used to putting people out.
Well, the deal is
He's an
he
anesthesiologist.
talk to us about it. But if you meet him, he comes off really nervous and really, really nice guy. Kind of jittery, and I mean, a really nice guy. But in every Evo, he would murder people. He would murder, like me. I got him out of the car. I sat in the car, just started. I forgot about him. And next thing I know, I feel a simmer hit me, pop, right inside the head. So I'm like, oh shit, I'm dead. So I laced to go dead. And then I'm listening to him in the back shooting poor Scott with like 1,000 Sims. Like, bat, Sims hurt, right? Bat, right? Scott like, so that's it. Evo, call the Evo. Okay. They showed the video, man. I got him out the car. He didn't give me any beef. He just faded back. And then he came up. Bap. Shot me. They jammed, fixed it. Calm as can be. And then after he's done, then he started shaking. And Waymaker was like, I bet if you gave him an AKG while he was killing us. Pro-social violence, baby.
Resting heart rate.
Pro-social violence, man. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's good to have good serial killers. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we need bad guys on the good side too. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I say bad guys. We need guys with those type of capabilities on the good side too. And I try to text him sometimes. I gotta find Mark, man, because he was bad dude. And I hope he doesn't look the part, which is typical sometimes. He doesn't look the part. But I'm a big believer that's the hole in where we at is that we need to get people doing more and better force on force.
Yeah. Well, it's sparring. right? If you're,
Yes.
martial arts,
Yes.
all we're doing at this point, or for the most part, all we're doing is punching bags, punching
Right.
speed bags.
Right.
And that's a good skill,
Right.
right? You can do some good drills, build skills from that, but that's not what's going to happen if you get in an actual, fist fight, knife fight, gunfight. And so those force on force skills, I think, are just massively lacking. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Something I've wondered in law enforcement is like, so whenever we did do that training, you'd have like your blue gun training, right? And you'd have like your force on force training, and inevitably people's behavior was always different because blue guns don't hurt.
Right.
There's no consequence.
Right.
But everyone knew what the consequence was with sim rounds.
Right.
And so, what I've always wanted to do is have, and I was thinking about this in a law enforcement context, and like a traffic stop, you pick like, 20 officers and just have them, half of them would do blue gun, half of them would do sim round, or actually, half of them do blue gun. I don't know how you divide it up, but like, I'd like to see the difference of how people behave in a blue gun situation versus how they behave in a sim. And if there's a way to shrink that gap, right? If there's a way to have them be more vigilant with, if it's notional, and then not the hyper vigilance that you don't even have on duty when we have you put on sim gear.
Right.
And I don't know if like some building in some sort of like complacency where it's like you have them do like 10 scenarios and nothing happens, and all of a sudden that 11th scenario something happens.
Yes.
I don't know how you do that, but have you noticed that, and like have you thought about that, and like how to maybe mold it to where people will treat it more realistic and not like go, it just seems like they go over the top sometimes with the sim, and that's not what you want either.
Right. I think that has a lot to do with the scripts, but I think that and the team that's doing it and having people who know how to be great actors. Craig gave us, and Craig gave us strict instructions on what to do. So it wasn't no hot dogging, nothing like that. It wasn't a game. You took it very seriously. You took your role seriously. Carl ran and imparted that same thing. I agree with you though. You just made me think about something when you said, there should be 10. The problem is kind of like with Dustin's book, is that I think that's brilliant. I just don't know if it's logistics. The logistics of doing it right. Yeah, it makes it hard to do.
We already don't have enough time for training in law
Basically,
enforcement.
right. Now we're going to do it. It's not going to happen, because nobody even wants to do that kind of stuff. And I mean, we would love to. Make me a billionaire and you got to worry about it. You know what I'm saying? Oh, don't worry about it. We got it. We'll fund it. No problem. But that's not going to happen. So,
Right.
If I could do that for police officers, that's exactly what I would do. I would do 10 that nothing happened, because you and I know on patrol, that's what happens.
Yeah.
The calls that went crazy with me weren't the ones that I thought. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we all went lights and sirens, it was done. You know what I'm saying? But it was, I remember one of the craziest calls I was ever on was check the welfare. You know what I'm saying? The door creaks open, guy standing there with a gun. You know what I'm saying? So you don't.
You have no idea.
No idea. You know what I'm saying? And you do 100 car stops, no problem. And then the guy, you find all of a sudden you crack a guy who's, not going back to prison. You know what I'm saying? He's got a trunk full of cocaine. And he knows it. You don't know it, and it's about to be on. That would be the more realistic. But again, logistically, how do you do that?
Yeah. I listened to a podcast years ago. Coleman Hughes?
I've heard.
Yeah, he has some really good guests on. But he had a police chief out of, gosh, I can't remember where this police chief was out of, but this guy would bring his officers. They had like this town, or they had like an area in their city where it was like, I guess maybe housing, maybe like old Section 8 housing that they blocked off, like no one lives it anymore. So it just turned into a training location.
Okay. I did that for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. January shoot.
Yep. That's where I took my Sims training. But go ahead. Yeah.
Which was a great area.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, for training.
Right.
So he would, while they're on duty, they would randomly call their officers to this location.
Oh, nice.
Take all their stuff off. Nice. They would have like their, the training gear stage with like in their pepper spray, their training batons, obviously training guns, and they put it on and throw them into a scenario, just like a call.
Dope.
Logistically, I don't know how in the world they do this, because that's pretty impressive. Yeah. But it just, I was also impressed by just the dedication to training that chief had to be able to put them in those situations, and that way they're sprinkling it throughout the day, and that it's going to carry over right to duty.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
You and I know about police administrators, you know what I'm saying? But occasionally you get one. Like, like I said, what Jeff's doing down where he is, man, is because the local sheriff is backing him. The lawyers hate it, but the sheriff's backing him, so when you get, every once in a while you get a law enforcement official who gets it, you know what I'm saying? And the thing is that if you got more of guys got it, you can do some of this stuff without it costing too much. Like that's scenario training. If you got rundown Section 8 that aren't that are going to be torn down but aren't torn down yet, why not? You know what I'm saying? You get guys who probably come in to do role playing for nothing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a little bit of role playing that we did in the police academy and stuff, the guys came to help out. You know what I'm saying? They weren't trained well, but they did at least show up to help out. But you have guys who may come and help out for that reason. Or you can get a guy, hey, we'll give you a couple hours of PTO. We'll give you some, some time off. You come and do a couple scenarios with us. We'll run about, 20 or 30 officers if we can, or maybe even 3 or 5. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, again, you need a chief, that gets it.
Or go to your local university and talk to their performance department and see if they have some people aspiring actors that want to, especially they're good actors.
Right.
My buddies and I when we were on duty, we'd go to like these new housing developments. They were like, brand new, no one's in them. They just got like either all sticks up or maybe they got like drywall up, and we would go through and run through clearing out those buildings on shift. And but that's sometimes you just got to do that. And obviously we're still on, we're still 10-8 waiting for calls and stuff. But
great ideas you got to do. The reason why you won't see that a lot is because a lot of the guys who get up in the ranks on police departments aren't often the guys who were bangers out on patrol. Unfortunately,
they stay below the radar.
Right.
They don't have enough. They don't have many write ups. And
right. When I got to precinct 12, when I was when I got on the force, man, those guys were like legends in the department, man. But they couldn't go up the corporate ladder. I mean, they were legends on the street, but they couldn't go up the corporate ladder. It wasn't. The guys who go up there are the ones who do it a different way. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But, and unfortunately, those aren't the guys who value training like that. They unfortunately sometimes I think they just play the numbers. They just play the odds, which is unfortunate because eventually it costs somebody their life. But it is what it is.
No, yeah, I noticed a lot of times it was almost more the bean counters.
That's who moves up in those situations.
Yeah, and I
get it.
Yeah, they have a different set of priorities,
yes,
so
do.
it's balancing all that. They probably
they have their place, so I get it. But
yeah. But real quick, what do you think makes a good instructor? And a follow up to that, what do you think separates a good instructor from, and take this however you want it, a good instructor from a great instructor?
A good instructor is student-centered.
Okay.
A good instructor is student-centered, and I think that's what will be the basis of it, because that's what drives him, is that he wants to see, it's not about, I'm going to paraphrase Craig Douglas on this. He says something to the effect of, when you're thinking about becoming an instructor, do you want to do something or be something or be somebody? If it's about you, that'll come out in your instruction, and your students will pick up on it because people are smart. And most people have been through some level of education in America. We're one of the most literate societies in the world, and you aren't the first teacher, even if you may be the first teacher of this. And a lot of people have, you get people in your classes that are brilliant at what they do, and they'll pick up if it's about you or it's about them. So I think to be good instructor, first of all, you have to be student-centered, because I think that's what that will flavor everything that you do and your approach to it. To me, what makes great instructors are they lose the ego. If I'm a great instructor, it has to be, you can run around with Tom Givens all day long, and when I don't pick up on him, or Rob Hart, or Masad Ayub, or John Farnham, is ego. I have been in classes and taught classes, and Masad will walk in, Masa will walk in, Farnham will walk in, Claude Warner will walk in, Tom Givens will walk in, and they're students. There's no ego, and they're looking for that one thing that this knucklehead kid might say that'll increase them and that they can give to their students. Before he passed, James Yeager brought his cadre to me. He needed to get them NRA instructor certified, probably for insurance or something like that. And they showed up. And so, his people over there, Joey and Heather, and phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Say what you want about their TTPs or whatever they're projecting, they are great people. And I'm extremely impressed with Joey. And for one thing, out of sense, no ego on him, none. And the staff, and the cool thing is it flows from there, because I don't pick that up off of his staff members either, which several of them have come to classes, and we've gone to their classes, and I'm very happy with what I see there now. Having said that, I'm a fan of James Yeager. I was. Mm-hmm. And he, when they came, the big trucks pulled up. Our parking lot is, little tiny parking, little tiny place. They see, these trucks where, you got to get a step ladder to get in them. And they pull up in the park, they pull up in the parking lot, and the guys jump out, and I look out the window, because I'm like, joking with the wife. So Camden Mafia is here, right? I look out, and I say, oh crap, the OG. You know what I'm saying? He was with them.
Wow.
That dude came and sat in that class, man, all 3 days, and was a student.
That's awesome.
Quiet, asked questions, added stuff. The beautiful thing is that was the last time I was with him before he passed, and he reinforced, that, despite, and he said something even that I thought was even more brilliant. He said to his students, he said to his people in front of us, he said, "Don't do it like me. I made it despite myself." So even that self-awareness, one thing you never got from James, at least on my level. Now, if you dealt with him in a business setting, other people I know, who've dealt with him in different ways, they got their stories. But one thing I never pulled off the man in all the times I was around him was at least in the class setting. There was other things I saw, but in class setting, he came off as the ego wasn't there. You know what I'm saying? At least in that setting. But I think that the ego it can be an impediment mm-hmm. to, keeping your mind open for what's available to you. And if you know anything about that dude, for example, whatever you thought about, he was always going to classes, man. He was always taking classes, you know what I'm saying, and going to other instructors. And when you asked him, how would he act in your class? Did he act like, he was a man who does 5,000 people a year? 5,000.
That's crazy. That's a lot of people.
Does he act like a man who teaches 5,000 people a year and has a bunch of them who hangs on his every word? Nope. Not at least to me. You know what I'm saying?
That's awesome.
So I hope I answered your question.
No, absolutely.
Student-centered,
I love that.
and like me and Tiff, that's why at the end of all our classes, you see that big ego with the,
yep.
no ego. Because what I find a lot of times is that's what's in the way of guys getting to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That reminds me of, and you do that as well. It reminds me of Jordan Peterson's rule: assume the person you're talking to knows something that you don't.
Always. I got some from another guy. I forgot who it was. He said, "When I argue, when I go into a debate, I hope that the truth manifests on their lips. That way, I grow." And that takes a lot because you want to be right. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to go into any debate and be wrong. You know what I'm saying? But if you're wrong, it's good if you're right because I was what I thought was happening was closer to reality. But it's also nice to learn something that shows a thirst for knowledge. And
it shows a true prioritization of the truth and not your ego.
One thing, the greatest compliment somebody ever paid me was a guy he was talking one day. He said, you're still curious. I thought that was cool.
That's awesome.
That's what I want to be. I want to be, especially about this thing that we do, I want to be curious. I want there was a guy that used to be like a bit of a mentor of me back in Buffalo. He was an old civil rights icon. His name was Jesse Nash, Dr. Jesse Nash. Brilliant man. And I remember, sitting, he was the only, at that time, he was the only black instructor at Canisius College, black professor on the whole staff. But we would sit and go talk to him because he was just a brilliant man. And we would have conversations about like just little things. And he'd be like, man, my mind is blown. like, Dr. Nash, all the stuff you've done. I mean, he's a medical doctor. He was also a doctor of sociology. I mean, he had like 2 doctorates. I mean, the guy was a brilliant man.
Wow.
And he was like, he would sit there and he would say, man, my mind was blown. I was like, oh, Dr. Nash, how often does your mind get blown? He said, 10 times a day. And I was like, wow, to be still that.
Yeah.
I don't know it all.
That's an exciting life, though.
Isn't it? It really is. You know what I'm saying? To constantly be learning stuff every day to make you go, wow, man, wow, and wow. You know, and I love that, and I love the fact that people are brilliant and people are you can always learn so much from. And I think that, you know, if you're going to do this thing, if you don't like people, do something else. Mm-hmm. I find there's a lot of firearms instructors that don't like people.
Yeah.
You know? And if you don't like people, then go do something else. I mean, there are jobs out there that you can do, you know, that you don't have to deal with the public. But but a lot of guys, they're looking for something else. You know, find somebody who does like people and back them up or something. You know, play the background. Just
do YouTube.
How about that? You never got to talk to anybody. Put out good content on YouTube and never have to meet a person. That's what I'm saying. So,
well, Ak, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
I hope you think so, man. Thank you. That means a lot.
Where can people find you?
Citizensafety.com. That's 2 S's. Citizensafety.com.
Link in the description for those you can't spell.
Okay, and you can info if you shoot an email to info@citizensafety.com. Me and Tiff get it, and we'll look at it. Give us 48 hours. We get a lot of email, but we promise we will respond at some point to everybody who comes in, even if it may be at 1 o'clock in the morning right before I go to sleep. I'm staring at my phone in the middle of the night, going through things. We'd love to hear from everybody. And again, you know, if you got questions about anything that we do, we're an open book. There's nothing. I like to think, you know, Taylor knows us enough that we don't hold anything. You know what I'm saying? We are very open source. You know, we don't share. Anything we had that's ours that we can share. Because we're believers. We're true believers.
Yeah.
We're true believers in this. So.
Well, thanks again, and thank you guys for watching. And as always, train to a higher standard.